wondering, you can record our event, so you do have permission to record. I'm sorry if it wasn't clear in the email, but yes, you do have permission to record. We will also, I repeat, we will also upload this to our YouTube channel. We are live on Facebook. I did not have that confirmation in the beginning, so that's why you had a silent pause. You had a silent pause with regards to that. If you need to enable recording, I am not sure how to do that. So if you want to put that in the chat or come off mute and show me how to do that, more than happy to do that. But all I see is pause and stop. So let me look at security, and maybe that might be it. That does not allow just to share. Nope, I do not have that at all. So once again, I do not see, I repeat, I do not see that, but I will make the recording available to you so that you can have it in its form. All right, once again, this is the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. I am here today with our chairperson, MICRC chairperson, Rebecca Zatella, Commissioner Rebecca Zatella, our executive director, Sue Ann Hammersmith, and the president of the Glengariff Group that did not only the post-survey, but also the pre-survey, in Richard Schuba. Mr. Schuba is going to provide an overview of the report and then take your questions. If you have questions that do not pertain to the report, we will take those questions after the questions for Mr. Schuba. Once again, if you have questions that do not pertain to the report that you would like to ask the MICRC representatives that are here today, we will take those questions after the report and the questions for Mr. Schuba are done. Without further ado, Mr. Schuba, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Edward. So I'm going to go through the key findings of the survey. As I always do when I review a survey, I'll give you the geeky pollster stuff first. It is a 600 sample live operator telephone survey, 75% cell phone, 25% landline. It is of Michigan registered voters. It's conducted February 11th through the 14th, has a margin of error of plus or minus 4%. It follows up on a benchmarking survey we conducted in late March of 2021. And what I'll do is I'll give you comparisons between those two numbers. Let's start at the top of the survey. We wanted to know what percentage of voters were familiar with redistricting changes in Michigan. It's a question we asked in the benchmarking survey. In this survey, we found 41% of respondents are familiar with Michigan's redistricting changes. That is a drop of 12 points since last spring. But I think it's important for us to look at exactly where the drop took place. We asked, one of the demographic questions we asked is, how engaged are you in the political process? 20.2% said they're very engaged. 58% said they're somewhat engaged. 16% said not really engaged, and 6% said not engaged at all. The drop substantially occurred amongst that 58% who say they are somewhat engaged. So for example, if you are very engaged in the political process, your awareness of the redistricting process did not shift. It remains statistically the same in the 61% range. If you are somewhat engaged in the political process, your awareness dropped from 53% to 44%. And as I told the commission earlier today, the further away we get from voters interacting with this process, in this case, many of these people in somewhat engaged category, the last time they interacted was when they cast a ballot in 2018. Further we get away from that, the lower the awareness is amongst that group. So we asked if voters were aware of or not of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. 35% of Michigan voters overall are aware of the commission. If they have heard of the benchmarking process or the redistricting process in general, that number jumps to 82%. So if you're aware of redistricting in some way, 82% of them have heard of the commission. That 35% overall amongst voters is an 11% increase from last spring. So one of the interesting things we look at here is the engagement level. And again, if you're very engaged in the political process, your awareness of the actual commission jumped from 33% to 52%. If you're somewhat engaged, it went from 23 to 36. If you're not engaged, it pretty much didn't change. It's low and it didn't change. There's a lot of information we include in the survey. We asked them what they had heard about the commission, and those who were aware had heard that they were redrawing the lines. They knew the basics of the commission. We asked those people what their opinion was of the commission. Was it positive? Was it negative? The reality is 51% of these people, and let's call them the aware voters, 51% of them have no opinion of the commission. They know the commission exists, but they couldn't offer an opinion about it. 34% had a positive opinion. 12% had a negative opinion. So if you were aware of the commission, a majority couldn't offer more than they were aware, but those who could, by a 3-to-1 margin, had a positive review of the commission. We asked those 34% who were positive why, and 27% said it's because it's the #1 answer and it was in an open-ended question. 27% said it was because the commission was fair and unbiased. Conversely, of that 12% that had a negative perception, we asked in an open-ended question why their perception was negative. The top answer at 25.6% was they felt the commission had done a bad job. And the second at 23% was they didn't think the maps were fair. And those were the two top responses there. So we asked those who are aware if they approve or disapprove of the commission. By a margin of 34 to 18, they approve of the work the commission has done. But again, 48% couldn't offer an opinion. They were aware of the commission, but they couldn't offer an opinion. Not a surprise. Those who are most engaged in the political process were the most likely to have an opinion here. And those very engaged voters approved by a margin of 38 to 26, but even 35% of them couldn't offer an opinion. So we asked voters, the aware voters, how closely they were following redistricting. 8.1% said very closely. That equates to 3.5% of the state's voters. 51% said they were paying some attention to it. That equates to 22% of the state's voters. So essentially you're looking at 1 in 4 of the state's voters who were paying very or some attention to this process. If you're very engaged in the political process, 71% were paying very or some attention. Back in the benchmarking survey, we asked voters a series of questions to determine what was most important to them in the redistricting process as it moved forward. And we took those issues, and there were 7 of them, and we asked them in the post-survey to rate the performance on the commission in each of those. There are 7 of them, and on all 7, at least a plurality approve of the commission's performance. On 5 of 7, a majority approve of the commission's performance. Let me go through those. Making sure the commission designs the districts rather than politicians. They approve of the commission's work by a margin of 61 to 17. Making sure that neither party gets an unfair advantage by gerrymandering districts. They approve of the commission's works 61 to 19. Making sure that Michigan voters, not elected officials, have input in designing Michigan's new districts. They approve of the district's work 60 to 18. Then we see a slight lowering of the numbers, but they're still similar. Making sure the maps were redesigned in public view so that all sides could watch the deliberations. They approve 57 to 20. making sure citizens had input into the design of new districts through public meetings, a public comment portal, a mapping portal that allowed everyone to provide comment. They approve of the commission's work 55-20, making sure communities with common historical, cultural, and economic interests are put in districts together instead of divided to weaken their voices. They approved by a margin of 48-19, but here we see the number of don't know jump to 22. And finally, making sure the commission was transparent in how they make their decisions. On this, they approved by a narrower margin, 46-29. And that 29% is the highest level of disapproval we saw. I will note one major statistical difference we see in these numbers, and that is on the question of the communities of interest metric. If you are a Caucasian voter, you approve the commission's work on this metric 53-14. If you are an African-American voter, you disapprove of the commission's work 31-54. I think that's a very important metric, and that's a very important difference in the statistics that we see. We asked voters how they were following the commission, or if they were following the commission. 80% said they were reading or following news stories. And again, these are 80% of the aware voters. 28% said they were looking at the commission's website. That equates to almost 10% of the state's voters looked at that website. For those of us who've been around government for a while, it's pretty amazing to see that number that so many people went to a website. 20% of aware voters said they were viewing a virtual or in-person presentation. That equates to 6.8% of the state's voters. 13% said they watched a meeting online. Equates to 4.5% of the state's voters. 8.3% of aware voters said they provided public comment or written comment. And that equates to about 2.8% of the state's voters. And finally, 2.9% of aware voters attended a public hearing held by the commission, and that's about 1% of the state's voters. Again, when you look at the engagement level of these aware voters, it completely changes based on how engaged they are in the political process. And I'll give you an example. For those who are very engaged in the political process, 44% of those voters said they looked at the commission's website. That drops to 22% for those who are somewhat aware, and it drops to 7% who are not engaged at all. So where we saw the engagement was with very engaged voters. We also saw some pretty interesting differences on engagement by party affiliation. While Democrats and Republicans were nearly equally engaged in the way they used online viewing or went to the website, we see Democrat voters were much more engaged, much more likely to attend a public hearing or provide comment, far more so than Republican voters. On social media, 51% said that they did not engage at all on social media. But when we start to look, 25% said they engaged on Facebook with the commission, 18% with the mapping portal, 12% with the public comment portal, 11% on Twitter, 10% on YouTube, 8% on Instagram. Those engagement levels on social media went up very much for those who are very engaged in political process. But when it came to social media, there were big differences, not surprisingly, by age. If you were following this and you were 18-29, only 36%, or 2/3, did use social media in some form. A third did not. But if you're over 65, 59% did not use social media. In terms of advertisements, we asked if they had seen or heard anything from the commission in terms of advertising. 35% of aware viewers had. 16% had heard something on television, 13% on the internet, 11% on radio, 5% on newspaper, and 1.6% by billboard. Republican voters, those aware Republican voters, were more likely than Democratic and independent voters to have seen or heard an advertisement. And give you an example here, when we look at political philosophy or their party philosophy, traditional Republicans, only 41% of the traditional Republican voters who were aware of this had not seen or heard an advertisement. They were the highest percentage we saw of those who had seen an advertisement. Comparatively, Democrat, when you look at Democrats, 64% of traditional Democrats did not see an said they did not see an advertisement versus 58% of Sanders Democrats. So those traditional Republican voters saw these advertisements at a far higher clip. They just chose to not actively participate with the commission. And let me get down to the bottom line on these numbers now. We asked these aware voters if they would give the commission if they succeeded or failed in providing citizens a greater role than politicians in designing the districts. By a margin of 50 to 22, aware voters said the commission did succeed in giving citizens a greater role. 28% of those aware voters, however, didn't have an opinion yet. So we asked in an open-ended question, what recommendations they had for the commission moving forward. By far, the #1 recommendation at 27% was that they need to keep people better informed or help citizens be more involved. I've done a lot of this kind of polling for government entities. That's not surprising. They always want the entity to do a lot more to reach out. And in a final call at the conclusion of the survey, we asked all voters. We came back to all voters and we asked them if Michigan should continue to allow the independent redistricting commission to redraw the state's maps, or should the state go back to allowing the state legislature to redraw the maps. By a pretty overwhelming margin, 65.5% said stick with the redistricting commission, 10% said we should return to the legislature. 24% of voters were undecided, or in some combination said both should do this. But by a margin, if you were aware of this process, these aware voters, by a margin of 79 to 5, they said the commission should continue to do this work. And we break this out at the end by party affiliation, and a majority of voters of each party affiliation say that the commission should do this work, ranging from a high of 75 amongst strong Democratic voters, 62% amongst independent voters, and 59% amongst strong Republican voters. So in summing all of this up, we do a lot of this kind of pre and post assessment work. The commission was successful in engaging people who are highly engaged in the political process as compared to when they started. There was not success in getting those less engaged people involved in this process. But when we look at how they're judged on these metrics, they receive very strong scores, in many cases 3-to-1 margin. The lowest is on that transparency question, the transparency metric. And in the end here, the bottom line is voters overwhelmingly want the commission to do this, continue to do this work as the years move forward. Any questions on that?
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Schuba, for that. I'm not sure who the iPhone person is, so if you can identify your name, that would be helpful with the organization you represent.
It's Clara Hendrickson with the Detroit Free Press. I was having computer audio issues.
Go ahead, Clara. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question. So I'm looking at the printout of the survey, and for the 7 metrics for the aware voters who were asked to weigh in on those, it says voters that were aware of Michigan's redistricting changes. So is that the 35% who are aware of the commission, or the 41% who are aware of the redistricting changes? Just want to make sure I understand.
That would be 41%.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other questions for Mr. Schuba? Raise your hands. Okay, Colin, Michigan Public Radio Network.
Hey, yeah, I was wondering about that difference you said when it came to voters responding to the communities of interest and how Black voters in particular disapproved of the commission's job compared to white voters. This is, I guess, for you, Commissioner Zatella. What does that mean for you to hear that, knowing that you wanted to take more time to work on some of the House maps in particular to address some of these issues?
I think first we need to get Mr. Schuba to clarify the stat you provided, and then Mr. Teller will be happy to answer your question.
What did you need me to clarify, Ed?
He did the stat with regards to the statistically difference of the communities of interest.
Sure. Caucasian voters rated the communities of interest at 53% approve to 14% disapprove. African-American voters rated that the commission 31% approved to 54% disapprove. Very sharp statistical difference.
Mr. Teller.
Yeah, I would just add on to that I think it confirms what we know. And we know from our hearings in the Metro Detroit area that African-American community in particular was not pleased with some of the maps that we had drawn, and they had requested changes. And I think that this just reflects what we already knew. And the commission ultimately decided not to make those changes as a body and to produce the maps that we did produce.
Colin, do you have a follow-up?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Anyone else with any questions with regards to the voter survey?
Yeah, Edward, I've got a question.
Please.
How much did this thing cost?
$22,000. Beth, Detroit News.
Yeah, sorry about that. So just following up on Kyle's question, why did you guys feel this was a worthwhile expense for the commission? And I mean, there's a lot of interest groups that have been observing the work of the commission. Was it possible they could have commissioned something like this, or?
Well, we wanted an independent analysis. Beth, a third-party analysis. As you know, we did a pre-survey with the Glengariff Group, and we also wanted to do a post-survey with them with regards to the same methodology, so that we can have statistically significant data, but also a benchmark for our next commission to identify areas where we can improve, identify areas that resonated well with voters, but also to get a sense of the confidence that voters had with regards to the process. As you know, when you evaluate yourself, it's never easy. And so Glengariff Grounp over and over again, as you know, with the Michigan State Police, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, have proven their reputation beyond a shadow of a doubt with regards to providing analysis that can be helpful. And we saw this as a worthwhile investment to engage the voters who by more than 61%, as you already know, voted to have proposal 2 pass to have an independent commission. And so as a result of that in voter engagement that took place in 2018-2, we wanted to ensure that we followed up with regards to our pre-survey in terms of making sure the messaging and things that we're doing were appropriate. But then we also wanted to follow up and evaluate ourselves, not give ourselves a self-evaluation, but an independent evaluation, which Mr. Schuba and his team has done repeatedly over and over again across state government, across both administrations, irregardless of Republicans or Democrats, to do that. And being independent, we thought that information was worthwhile, and to share that with the public through a third-party way so that there could be analysis with regards to our work. Colin?
I guess just a quick follow-up on that, Edward.
Sure.
I guess, so how do you feel this will guide your work moving forward, or guide the next commission?
Well, I think in terms of, if you look at the information, it's quite clear, more than by a 6-to-1 margin, people have confidence with regards to the commission and its ability to follow the 7 ranked redistricting criteria, but more importantly, to be independent and to take politics out of the process and make common sense solutions. I mean, that's something that came out of the survey. Looking forward, we can see with regards to what media and social media works and doesn't work in terms of future investments that people can look forward in the future. That's also identified in the data as well. So, you know, people will have their opinions with regards to whether or not they see this expense as relevant, but the commission felt it was, you know, in an open and transparent process. They voted it. And if Commissioner Zatella or our executive director wants to add to that, they can. But this is why this has happened. So this is where we are. I see your hand, Kyle, as well, and then you'll go right after Colin. But definitely want to give an opportunity for either Commissioner Zatella or executive director to weigh in.
Yeah, I was going to add that I think the information is certainly going to be useful to a future commission, because one of the big concerns we had as a commission is what kind of outreach should we do, and is the outreach effective? That was something that came up over and over again. And I think this study in particular shows us areas that were effective, areas that weren't effective, and will allow a future commission to target better on getting that communication and getting that word out into particular communities and what vehicles to use to do that. So I think it's going to be very helpful in the future.
If I could just throw in an assessment here. I think one of the things moving forward for any commission to realize is they need to have realistic expectations about the difficulty of engaging the voters across the state. You are a very engaged political person. You're going to pay attention to this. It's going to be a lot hard. It's clearly a lot harder to engage people, voters who just, this isn't their daily concern. And I think that's important for any commission moving forward, to just be realistic about the degree of engagement that can be expected here.
Beth, did we answer all your questions?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Colin?
Yeah, I guess as a quick follow-up to Beth's question, then, are there any specific rule changes that you can make, that this body can make for future bodies going forward? And if so, like, what are some things? You mentioned advertising earlier, Edward. What else is there that, or in terms of rules, even for how commissioners work with each other, that can be made based off this analysis?
I don't know necessarily about rules, but we'll probably look at, you know, budget recommendations, and maybe should we increase, you know, more of the communication. If you look at some of the numbers in terms of an investment, that could be a possibility for consideration for future commissions, but I don't know if it would really impact our rules. I'll defer to our executive director, Sue Hammersmith, or even our commission chairperson, Rebecca Zatella.
Well, the next commission will be independent, just like this commission, and they can choose to learn from this commission or not. They can choose to use the policies and procedures that we have adopted as a starting point. As you know, this commission started with a blank slate and has progressed very well, I believe, over the last year and a half. But again, the next commission will be totally independent, totally separate from this body. So they will make their own rules, but hopefully they will learn from what this commission has done and do an even better job.
Thank you. Kyle?
Yeah, thanks, Edwards. I'm sorry for busting. I couldn't find the hand thing here. I'm pretty, yeah, I'm a little Zoom illiterate here, but okay. So I just want to be clear. So how many polls has Richard Zuba done for you all?
There was a pre that took place in March of last year, and of 2021. And then there was a post survey that took place this month of February 2022. The one on March is on our website. It's been there. We've talked about it. Same type of presentation was made available to the public in an open and transparent manner, just like this post survey was done.
Okay, so he's done two. So is it $22,000 for each poll he's done, or for both polls that he's done?
It was 26, Kyle, for the first one, and 22 for the second one.
Thank you.
Claire?
Yes, this is a question for Executive Director Hammersmith. So if I'm remembering correctly, I believe the commission has consistently balanced its budget in the past, but it's now facing a $1.2 million shortfall.
Hold on, Claire. We're just doing questions first with Mr. Zuba, so we can let him go. Then we'll take all the other questions afterwards. So do you have any questions related to the Michigan voter survey?
Not at this time.
Okay, does anyone else have before we let Mr. Schuba go? And then Claire, we'll start off with you. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Schuba?
Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Schuba, for your time, and we appreciate your outstanding work. Okay, Claire, go for it.
Right. So if I'm remembering correctly, I believe the commission has balanced its budget in the past. It's now facing a $1.2 million budget shortfall. Sorry. So I'm just wondering if Executive Director Hammersmith can explain how that happened, and if you are expecting the legislature to approve additional funds to the commission.
Yes, thank you for that question, Claire. In some ways, the pandemic did help the commission because for the first approximately 6 months of the commission, they did Zoom meetings. So that saved a tremendous amount of travel money and AV money in producing those in-person meetings. The commission was very fortunate to balance the budget the first year. The other very, very significant difference is in the first fiscal year, which ended September 30, 2021, there was no litigation. And the costs of this budget, first of all, the budget was reduced slightly. However, the costs in this budget really stem from litigation. So the commission is in the process of defending the maps it created. And that is why we predict a budget shortfall. The Constitution clearly states that the legislature will provide for this commission what it needs to defend the maps. So we will be going to the legislature in the near future to make a request.
Claire, did you have a follow-up?
I do not. Thanks.
Thank you, Claire. Lauren?
In light of the raises that were approved today, how does that, I have two questions related to that. One, how does that square with the deficit that the commission is facing? And two, I'm curious if you can tell me how commissioners are being paid at this point. Is it still, is it based on the amount of time they are working, or is this just an ongoing basis as though we're a full?
Well, I think we're going to, our executive director will handle that question, but let's be clear, it was a cost of living adjustment due to inflation. There was no merit raises given at all. Just so we're very clear, it was a COLA, a cost of living adjustment due to inflation that's been well documented. There was no raises, no merit raises provided at all. Executive Director Hammersmith. And Kyle, I do see you in the chat, so you'll be next.
I would have to look at the budget to actually determine the exact impact dollar-wise. I'm happy to do that and provide that at a later time. The commission sets its own rules, and the Constitution clearly states what the pay of the commission will be, at least 25% of that of the governor, as long as they're acting and they feel in their role they're continuing to act to support litigation and to support the maps that they have drawn.
Just so you know, Lauren, if you took a look at the meeting materials today on February 24th, it's right there in terms of what's been approved on the budget as relates to commissioner pay. If you have an opportunity, you will see that under the meeting materials for February 24th. And the COLA adjustment, I repeat, the COLA adjustment across the board would be an additional 7% to that budgeted number. That's right there in the meeting materials today on the website. Did we answer both of your questions, Lauren, or did you have a follow-up?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you answered my second question. I'm just curious. So so commissioners are still receiving a full salary in addition to this cost of living raise?
Adjustment.
It was a raise.
Okay, well, okay. Cost of living adjustment. So right now they are getting the same rate of pay that they were, I believe, Sue, since the inception of the commission in 2020. Commissioner Teller, correct us if I'm wrong, but the increase is the pay is the same rate of pay that the commission voted in 2020. It's the same in 2022. It's just that today there was a COLA, cost of living adjustment due to inflation of 7% that was that the commission voted today.
And that is correct, Edward.
Thank you. Beth, Detroit News, please. I'm sorry, Kyle, did I forget you? Go ahead, Kyle. Sorry, Beth. you'll be right
That's
back
okay.
on.
I don't care. Beth's good too. All right. So to the chair here. So what is your understanding on how long the commission is going to be hanging around? Because, you know, the governor doesn't have any funding in her budget for you guys after October 1.
So I think that's an issue we're still trying to sort out. There's been some questions as to the constitutional interpretation as to what exactly the term is, and that hasn't been resolved yet. And so we are still sorting through getting legal opinions on that so that we can, you know, reach a conclusion on that. But there's just a lack of clarity in the way that the constitutional amendment was written, and some uncertainty around that, which is why we're seeking a legal opinion.
Okay. And I just want to be clear as far as the numbers now with today's COLA adjustment, you guys are going to be making what, 59,000 a year? Is that, do I got my math right on that?
That sounds correct. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that sounds correct.
Okay. And then as far, you guys are already getting hit here about how much work you're putting in for that $59,000 a year. What can you say about the amount of work you all are putting in right now, even after you've drawn your maps?
Well, for me personally, being the chair, there is a decrease in the amount of work, but I'd still say I'm putting in a good amount of work, being the chair and working on my dissenting report and assisting with litigation and doing all the other things that are associated with that. So I wouldn't say we're doing nothing. There has been some discussions among the commissioners about potentially reducing the salary. That came up as well. And I think as we enter into more of a latency phase as a commission, if we decide that our terms continue, then I think there's going to be continued discussions about reducing those salaries. So they're all open issues still. They're things we're exploring and we're trying to sort out. We're trying to be responsible stewards of the public's money, but still making sure that the commission is being fairly compensated for their work.
Thank you for being available.
Thanks, Kyle. Beth, I'm sorry, it's your turn now.
Yeah, thank you. I guess just following up on that really quickly, are you guys aware of any other state employees or public employees who got a COLA? And then also, just following up on Kyle's question, is there like an end date in terms of full pay for the commission? Like, do you see, yeah, a month from now or a few weeks from now, or maybe even now, we should start decreasing our pay at this point?
Let me take the first question. As you know, the commission is part of the legislative branch. We're not a part of the executive branch. So with regards to their merit increases, their COLAs and things along those lines, that is not something that we are aware of in terms of what the state employees are getting and the benchmark for that. As you know, the commission just based that solely on inflation. Once again, the COLA was solely based on inflation. And as an independent body, it can vote whatever it recommends, and they speak as a voice. And that's what happened today with regards to the COLA. Once again, that was based on the inflation rate, As for the second part of your question, Commissioner Zatella can respond.
Yeah, and I think that's my prior answer is it's an open question. We're not really clear. We're trying to seek legal counsel about it and decide how we're going to continue as a commission moving forward, if we're going to be continuing or how that's all going to work out. But it's definitely an open question at this point.
One more follow-up on that. Sorry.
Sure, Beth.
I know Executive Hammersmith mentioned that the Constitution clearly states the legislature is obligated to pay to help the commission defend the maps that it created. But do you think, does that extend to commission COLA increases and documentaries and polling and kind of stuff that doesn't necessarily fall into that defense of maps?
I don't know that I can offer a comprehensive answer on that. It's kind of a complex question in terms of what the constitutional language is. So Executive Director Hammersmith, if you want to weigh in on that, but I feel like that's a bit above my pay grade to try to answer such a complicated question.
We may ask legal counsel to weigh in on that also. However, I just did a quick 7% on what remains of the budget, realizing we're halfway through the fiscal year. It would be about a little under $32,000 total. for the balance of the fiscal year, assuming this commission remains in full action through the end of this fiscal year. So a lot of it depends on litigation, how much is filed, what's required of this commission moving forward, and that is certainly unknown territory.
All right, Dave, AP.
Hi, thank you. To follow up with the chair, can you talk a little more about this legal opinion you're seeking? What do you, I guess, hope to find out? And secondly, I think the state constitution requires that you're paid at least 25% of the governor's salary. Are you asking about potentially making less than that as the work subsides in coming months?
So could you repeat the first question? Because I didn't quite catch what the first question was.
Just seeking some clarity on what specifically you're asking in this legal opinion about how much longer you'll be meeting.
Yeah, so the issue in the debate is we have language in the constitutional amendment that says that the commissioner's term shall exist for a census cycle. And then we have other language that references that the term shall expire when our duties are complete, but not before this conclusion of any judicial, I can't remember the exact language, but I believe it's like evaluation of the plans. So the question that the commission has been struggling with is, does census cycle mean that we are in place for 10 years? Or does this other language mean that we are in place as long as there's no pending litigation? And if once there's no pending litigation, we go into a latency period until there's more litigation. So that's the issue the commission is struggling with. And there's just not a lot of clarity, and there's lots of different opinions on the commission as to what that language means. And we're just trying to sort it out responsibly by getting a legal opinion on it. And then in terms of the second question was, can you refresh my memory?
I think the state constitution says that, commissioners have to be paid at least 25% of the governor's salary. Could you, I guess, voluntarily be paid less than that as the commission meets less frequently in coming years, coming months?
Well, that is something that came up for discussion at our last meeting as well, not the one today, but 2 weeks ago. And something I had suggested and thrown out there is maybe we could do a per diem, where if we're meeting twice a month, that we get a per diem rate based on the prior annual salary, and that's what we're paid. I think that's something we're exploring as a commission too. Again, we're trying to be fiscally responsible and be good stewards of the public's money. And so we're trying to sort that out, whether we even can do that, because there is constitutional language specifying that we need to be paid a minimum rate, and whether there's a way that we could potentially change that if we thought it was appropriate.
And just for the members of the press, in the chat, I posted the legislation so you can see where Commissioner Zatella is referring to. It's posted in the chat, just so if you can click on it, if that would be helpful to you. All right, are there any questions, any additional questions that anyone may have? I will send you a link to the live recording so that you can have it for yourself, unedited, so that you can have it. But if there's any additional questions that you may have, we can take them at this time. One more question. Sure, Kyle.
Thank you. I just got a text here from the spokesperson from the Senate Republicans. Madam Chair, he said that if you're planning on coming to the legislature for more money for your raises, since you're running a deficit, his response would be, I hope they know how to start a GoFundMe. I wanted to get your response to that.
That's clever. I would say that's a clever comment.
Quote of the day.
Hold on, don't sell Commissioner Teller short, Kyle.
I'm not
gotta
done.
wait.
So I would say we wouldn't be going to the legislature for COLA adjustments, because as Executive Director Hammersmith pointed out, in addition to having a COLA, we've also had an employee depart who is a substantially compensated employee. So any COLA adjustment has been offset by the departure of our general counsel. So we wouldn't be going for those reasons. It would be strictly related to the litigation and the litigation costs, and that's established by our budget, which shows exactly that where those costs are coming from, and it's almost entirely litigation and attorneys.
All right, anything else? If you could be kind enough, I just really would appreciate if you could be kind enough to, when you talk to your public and you're going out, we're really trying to help us improve the redistricting process, and share with your listening audience to come to our public comment portal, to help us improve MICRC. That is something that we want to do. In order to have better government, you have to be evaluated, and that evaluation comes from the public. It comes from the public. So we want to hear from all Michiganders, irregardless of where they live. We want to hear from all Michiganders across the state with regards to how we can improve the process as a lessons learned. So we can include that in our report that we plan to share later this spring. And if you can help us get some feedback from the public, we would greatly, I repeat, greatly appreciate your help. They can do it through our public comment portal, available at michigan.gov/MICRC, or they can mail us. They can mail us at MICRC, P.O. Box 30318, Lansing, Michigan 48909. Once again, MICRC, P.O. Box 30318, Lansing, Michigan. I repeat, 48909. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your time. Have a great evening, and we'll look forward to connecting with you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.